Welcome to Pro Practice, your guide to piano mastery. I'm Josh Wright, and I'm excited to announce the second guest tutorial given by Dr. Ben Laude on the French Suite No. 5 in G major by Johann Sebastian Bach. Today's tutorial will be going over the Gigue from the French Suite No. 5. Last week's tutorial, the first tutorial given on this channel by Dr. Laude, went over the Allemande. This is a highly popular piece by Johann Sebastian Bach, and I hope you all enjoy his wonderful teaching. He is witty, humorous, and very knowledgeable. If you haven't already checked out the first tutorial, I go over his entire biography in that one, so I won't rehash that in case you've already seen that. But if you haven't seen that, I would highly recommend you go check that out. Most of you will know Ben from his time, the 4 years he was at Tonebase, which is an amazing platform where he interviewed and did video tutorials with hundreds of different topics with many famous concert pianists, including Yujia Wang, Garrick Olson, and Marc-Andre Hamelin. Ben, in his own right, is an amazing pianist. He has degrees from Rice University and the Juilliard School. Without further ado, welcome to Dr. Ben Laude.
All right, now it's time to party. We're at the Gigue of Bach's G major French Suite, and it's one of the most exuberant, jubilant parties that Bach ever wrote for the keyboard. It's in a quick 12/16 with these sort of 3-note 16th groups, and there's 4 of them in every bar, so you get this 12 effect. But what you really hear is this kind of pop and the repetition of yeah. For me, this is a fiddled kind of sound. The Gigue originates again in Ireland, Scotland, and in England, and you can imagine maybe an Irish fiddle player sort of sawing away with some of these figurations, and you can imagine people dancing to it. I mean, for the most part, Bach's dance suites are not actually meant to be danced to. I think this might be an exception. You kind of want the audience tapping their foot along to this one. There's a pulse that you can ride all the way through. Even the harpsichordists keep a pulse with this one, where in other movements they might be more flexible with it. So the first thing to cultivate here is a very firm and steady pulse, so that you can really show that meter and then enjoy the subdivisions. So this jig, as it might be called, is really thrilling and fun, and you have to be able to have fun playing it, which is tough because it's hard. So let's talk about why it's hard. First of all, it's fugal. It has 3 voices that sort of start cascading in, and begins like this. All right, that's the subject of this fugue-like set of entrances, and then after the soprano announces it, we start coming down, and we get our next entrance, which was right where I stopped. In the alto. Okay, so and then it comes in the tenor, right? The next voice down. Right, and then we start sequencing. So that's 9 bars, 3 plus 3 plus 3, kind of a 2.5 at the end, and he elides it with the beginning of the sequence. You hear just a fragmentation of this sort of fanfare motive that came from the subject. Right, and it just provides the material, the rhythmic and motivic material that drives this piece forward. And you'll notice you start getting this kind of rhythm in the left hand, or be careful that rhythm doesn't slow you down. I remember listening to some of my older recordings of this, and I get kind of dragged down here. Right, so make sure it always has that rhythm lives inside here. It's at the beginning if you kind of get rid of the B. And sometimes he actually just look at bar 20. He actually just straightforward writes that. He could have written. I don't know, just leave out some notes and suddenly you have that rhythm. So notice that you can play these subdivisions in different ways. So when you're practicing it, sometimes you might lean more to that. Other times you might try accenting the subdivisions in your practice. right? You need to have control over all of them, and you need to be able to make it bounce and sparkle in different ways. Again, if you take a repeat, you might want to show. I think when Gould repeats this the second time, he kind of shows that that's there, whereas in the first time, the B is more prominent, right? So this also informs your practice. And okay, so how does this how does this get more complicated? Well, it's not as complex as a fugue you might learn in the well-timbered clavier for the most part, but there are some irregular phrases going from bar 10 through bar 14. You see sort of sequencing. It's a modulating passage. It's imitative, moving towards D. Middle bar of 14 through 17, you get the fourth bass entrance, if you will, even though there's only 3 voices. Now you get this down here. And then it continues longer and helps really take you and establish your ear in the dominant, right? And so that's irregular because this started in the middle of the bar and then it had an extension. There's the downbeat. Okay, and then a very fun thing happens in 20. You get the subject again, almost complete, I think, but it's between 2 voices. It's between the sort of middle voice, whether it's alto or tenor, and the top voice takes it. Let me do that again. Right, and then the soprano took it. So this was the voice, which contributes to this wonderful sense of dialogue. And I mean, there's multiple people hanging out and having fun and taking turns sawing away at this subject and articulating it and sharing it sometimes. So again, it's a party. I mean, it's after the wedding ceremony and everyone's really happy and headed to cocktail hour. I don't know. All of the technique tips that I gave in the Allemande lesson are going to apply here, although you're going to have to get even more nimble with your fingertips. But in terms of playing with 2 different articulations at the same time, maybe you start trying that with arpeggios, since there's lots of arpeggios in this. Pick a pattern, but try. The point is to be able to do 2 different things at the same time. You can also do it with dynamics, or combine different dynamics and articulations. So get good at that in that sort of controlled training ground of just playing it with different arpeggios and scales, so that when you get to this and you need to be able to have a very clear entrance here, well, that stays a little lighter, you're going to be able to do that more easily. All right, continuing the walkthrough now in the B section, and you'll see